Where is the notification? Exactly. Okay. I think let me increase my mouse size. Okay, so we'll start shortly. Let me just increase the size of my mouse pointer so we can see it clearly. Okay, I think I might need this from time to time. Okay, so today we're going to learn something interesting. We're going to learn something interesting. All right. Let me open something we did during our design challenge. And I think a lot of persons had issues with creating that mirror effect when we did a design for the Rolex wristwatch. So I want us to go over it again. But this time, we'll learn how to create reflections, mirror reflections, and all that. Okay? Good. So I just want to quickly show you, maybe if you were not with us when we did that, I just want to show you what I'm trying to explain. So we are going to do glass morphism and mirror effects. Okay? All right. So relax. Okay, so it's going to open up in a short time. And now you can see these mirror reflections we have here. It was a bit tricky creating these reflections. You need to have an understanding of how reflections work to actually create something like this. Okay, now I want us to use someone's image. So I want us to download the image of an angry man. Let's see what we can find. And if you participated in yesterday's class, you can find the design assets on the Telegram group. And if you're not on the Telegram group yet, kindly find a way to be there. Okay. I need something else. I need something like this, but let's just look for one. Well, I'm not really getting what I am looking for. I'm trying to get something, but it might take me a while to find it because trying to get the exact image you are looking for might be a bit tricky. So I just want to, let's use this guy. So now we have this guy and he looks kind of fine. All right, so we have this guy. Let's just give him a background color. Well, this seems to work well. Or should we change it? So this seems to work well for me. At least I think so. Okay, let's make it a little bit darker so that we have something nice. Okay, so we want to create reflections, but you can use any shape you like. You can use any shape you want. I want us to use, we would use a round shape, a circle, just like the ones here. We would also use a rectangle, and we'll also use a kind of rough shape to make it look like it's a broken mirror or parts of a broken mirror. All right, so let's get to work. First of all, I want you to understand that creating mirror reflections, it's dependent on your understanding of how objects appear in a mirror. Okay, and then you have to understand the colors that make something look like a mirror. So for you to have your mirror-like object, it has to kind of use colors like gray, white, something around there, or silver, something around silver, gray, and white. So that's what, if you look at this very well, you would see gray. I created this with a gradient of gray, dark gray, and light gray. Okay, so let's do that right here so that we can see. I'm going to draw my circle. I'm going to make it draw something like this. Let me change the color so that we can see it. Oh, it's already white. So now I want this to, where should I put it now? Let me move this guy to this side so that we can see. Okay, so this should be a reflection of this guy. All right, so if you take it too close to him, you might actually now need a back image of this guy, but we don't have that, so we can't take our mirror very close to him. All right, you will see why very soon. You will see why. Okay, so I will explain why so that you can understand. Okay, so now this has to have a combination, a gradient color of, I like using dark gray, not a very dark gray. It's just something around the brighter shades of gray. All right, so let's just do that. No too much talk. So you come to your fill, and then now if my Photoshop interface looks confusing, I actually arranged it like this. So in Photoshop you can push some panels around and arrange it the way you like, but it's still the same thing, still the same function, everything is the same. So what you have to do now is come to your properties panel, and where you see this fill option, ensure that the shape is selected. You go to gradient. Now you give it this nice gradient, but you have to edit the colors. So double click that, and then you can just use something around here, something like this, or let's go for, let's say 40% gray. You're under the HSB section. In the brightness section, you can just type in 40 or 50. Let's go with 50. I think 50 is the best option. So now you can copy the color code, and then you can pull this point here, add another point, and we'll give it that same gray we used. You can just paste the color code here, and now you can see it's now having this silver like color. Okay, so you can adjust the angle so that it doesn't look like I think this is just perfect. Okay, so we don't want it to look like a thin slice of God knows what, so we can just duplicate the shape. You can hold Alt and bring it down, or use the shortcut Ctrl J. So this one, we are going to give it a solid color, but before you do that, nudge it out a bit, out from the original shape. So let's change the color to a solid gray color, maybe dark gray. Doesn't have to be this dark, so you can just, so it's to just give it that sense of thickness, so it doesn't look like a type of object we don't understand. So doing this simple thing alone has created your mirror layer. Okay, so what we have to do now to have the reflection of this guy in the mirror, we'll duplicate this guy with Ctrl J, and then you can do Ctrl T, drag him out. What we are going to do is right click and flip horizontal. So now look at this. So this part of him is going to be inside the mirror, and we can bring it down and create a clipping mask and clip it to our mirror layer. So you can just right click and scroll down and say create clipping mask. So you can now see we have, if you need to give it some spacing, you can do that, but that simply just give us. Now let's try to, I'm selecting both layers now, and then let me move it around so it looks a lot more. So you can now see we have a reflection of this guy in the mirror. So that's how to create this mirror reflection. So let's say let me group this, not necessary. So I want to duplicate this mirror, I'll bring it to this side. I want us to see the other side, so I'll right click and flip horizontal. I think we should have this, so it should still be under this guy. Now we are going to duplicate him again, Ctrl J, and then I'll bring him just above this other layer, and then Ctrl T, let's push out the copy. Remember, so now you can't keep it like this. Okay, so you know that whatever shows in a mirror is the opposite side. All right, how do I explain that? It's the inverse of what you can actually see. Okay, so you create this as a clipping mask again, right click, create clipping mask. So this doesn't really fit what we are trying to create, so you just do Ctrl T, right click, flip horizontal. So this is what actually fits what we are trying to create. Okay, so this is how I achieved that mirror reflection that you saw there. Okay, so you can look here. Now this is not realistically placed because now it's still looking like different people. Now check the shoulders. So we still have to move this guy. His face might have to hide so that this looks realistic. So you can now see, you watch the shoulders. So that is it. So if you want to like spice this up a bit, you can now start adding some lights, because now if you look at this, you can look at this wristwatch here. You can see that this is the opposite. What is showing on the mirror is the opposite of this. Okay. Okay. So now I'll delete every other thing, and then I'll just use some rough shapes. Let it look like pieces of glass. Alright, so you can select the pen tool and then maybe draw a random shape. So once you do that, come up here and click shape. Okay, so we now have this. We are going to give it that gradient. So you can click this, your shape icon, maybe come here, select gradient, and then still that same gradient. So we'll edit this one and make it set the brightness to 50%, so it's like 50% gray, and then we'll drag this white to the center and then add another point here and still give it 50% gray, so this should be 50. So we can now adjust the angle so it looks like that. Okay, so just like we did before, duplicate this guy and create him as a clipping mask. But if you want your mirror object to have some form of thickness, duplicate the shape and then nudge it to the right or to the left, whichever part you feel like using, and then change the color back to a solid color. So select the shape tool again and then select solid color. So once you select a solid color, it just gives it that thickness. It doesn't have to be complicated. Alright, so let's duplicate this guy. Ctrl J and then Ctrl T, right click and flip horizontal. So you can see. Ensure that you do not scale it down or anything. Do not scale down the picture, just flip horizontal and then bring it right above your mirror layer and create a clipping mask. So you right click and create clipping mask. So Ctrl T, let's move it this way. So looking at this, it's already creating this realistic mirror reflection. Okay, so that's what is already happening. You can see it already. So let's say you wanted to have that flash of light. You want it to look like a flash of light. So now let's say if I link this together, select both layers and like link them. If I move this one, you can see it automatically starts affecting the mirror object. So but now there are places where you get to and it doesn't look real anymore. Why? Because this is, now let's say if I bring it up, you can look here. This is supposed to show the back of this man, but we don't have the back image of him, so it's somehow restricted. So you have to know where this applies, because you can't keep this like this and expect it to work. Okay, so you can have something like this. So this really gives you a good mirror reflection. And if you want to add some light effects, you can just create a blank layer. You click here to create a blank layer and then select your brush tool. You can select your foreground color to like white, maybe not too white, it depends on which one you want to use. So I think I'll go with white, and then right click and ensure that your brush, the hardness is 0. Okay, and then excuse me, you can just click once. Now it's already happening. So change the blend mode to screen, and now you have that light effect. It's nothing complicated. So let's try clipping it to this image and see. It doesn't give us what we are trying to get. So you can leave it like this. Maybe you can do Control T and move it around and maybe scale it down if you want to. Alright, so but you can already see that we are having this light effect. Okay, so let's bring it above this guy so it looks realistic. So that is exactly what I did right here. Okay, so you can see the light bouncing, and then you can add your text and whatever you want to add. Now that's all for mirrors and creating mirror effects. So because I linked this, so if I move it, you can see that it's creating that mirror reflection. So you might need to use this maybe in your designs or something. It's necessary. So I'll close this. Now I want us to do something that we did in previous classes, which was last year. How to create some 3D looking objects in Photoshop and make it look like nothing happened. Alright, so we'll change our background color to something close to white. Now there is this image I saw on Pinterest that really inspired me, so I literally want to recreate it but also teach you how to do it at the same time. So first things first, we've done this in previous design challenges and it seemed that only a few persons were able to attempt it. So we're going to repeat it because we have some new persons who joined us, so we have to like carry them along and things like that. So first things first, select your pen tool and then you can draw a rectangle. Let me draw one. So you can just draw a shape and then I select shape. I'm going to give this a yellow color. I'm going to give this something close to orange. It doesn't have to. Okay, I think this is just cool. So now under this one we just created, under this layer, create another one. So you can select the layer under it and click this layer icon, or you can come up here and go to layer, new, and then you click on layer. It's still going to create a new layer. So in Photoshop, I just want you to know that there are like at least 2 or more ways to achieve a particular thing. Okay, so you use which one you're much more comfortable with. So under this one, I'll still come with my pen tool and let me lock this, because if you try to create shapes on top of another shape layer, they most times intersect. You get? So I'll lock this so that it wouldn't have any interaction with it. So I'll just like draw something like this. So you can try to be as perfect as you can. So the more perfect you are, the much better your results. So I'll click on shape, but this time to make it look real, we cannot have it as the same color. Now see, this edge is coming out, so I can just push it. We cannot have it as the same color, if not we are not going to get the effect that we want. So this other one has to be a bit darker. So we can just make it darker, just like this. Okay, so I'm going to bring it under the layer I created. So it's now looking like a 3D object already. All right, so I'll group this. Let me unlock this now. I'll group it and then I'm going to duplicate it, Control J, but I want this copy to be under it, so I'm going to like scale it down. Yeah, well, if I want to achieve that again, with the way I drew this one, it won't fit, so we might have to do it again. So glad we have to do it again so that you can see it. And now I want the other one to come from, to make it look like it's more of the top view. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So let's go again. So just draw your shape. Oh no, let's do that again. Okay, this is too wide. This is too wide. I just want to create something smaller to just simulate what I'm trying to explain. I'll show you different applications of this thing. If you know how to do this thing, yeah, if you know how to do this thing I'm trying to show you, you'll be able to create a lot of designs without having to depend too much on downloading assets. To be honest with you, when I learned this, it reduced how much I depended on downloading assets. So just like before, we create a shape for this, but this time, to make it look different from this, we just have to reduce the brightness of this a little, so you can just bring it down a little. So now it just creates that difference. So it's the difference in brightness that really makes it look good. So just scale this up a bit. We can bring it here. All right, so just like before, create another layer, and then maybe you can just do this just like before. So like I said, try to be as perfect as you can, because the more perfect you are, the better your results. All right, so still make it a shape, and this time, just like before, reduce the brightness. So I'll bring this under this layer. So I'll still group them, Control G. So let's try to put a product on top of here. Let's see how we can make use of it. Okay, let me get one of those designs those images we created before. So I'm going to go to, we'll recreate this in several ways so that you would really get what we are trying to explain, because I really want you to understand it. There are different ways you can use this thing I just showed you. It's not only with sharp edge shapes. And where's my folder? Okay, so I created something. If you see this Lumisia design, that is exactly what I used, but I used it in a different form. Okay, so if you look at this, it looks like this brown area now that you see, that was exactly the same technique. Okay, so I think we might have to use this particular bottle. So let's say you have something like this. So I'll scale it down. You can rotate this as well. So I'll scale it down. And then I can add a blur to this one. Let me shift it out a bit so that it doesn't obstruct this other one. I can add a blur to this layer. So let's convert it to a smart object. So we just right click and convert to a smart object. You can go to filter, blur, then Gaussian blur. Now this blur is too much. We just want to create that sense of what they call it depth of field in photography. So that's what we are trying to recreate. So once we've done that, what is left to do here is to add the shadow. All right, so we can just draw a shape, any shape, and then it has to be under this layer, and then we can still blur this too to look like the shadow. So you can go to filter, Gaussian blur, and then let's rasterize. So you can blur this, and then maybe you can use your eraser tool, right click, reduce the size. Mine is on. Okay, so reduce the size, scale it up. You can use the bracket keys, or you right click and manually increase the size. So just to erase some parts of the shadow if you have to. Okay, so now doing this alone is already giving your stuff some sort of dimension. Okay, so now let's try to recreate duplicate this one that we already used as depth of field. So we can just do Ctrl J, and this time let's bring it to this other side. Then you right click and flip horizontal. Yep, so you can do this for somewhere like here, and then once you place it back, the depth of field. So if you want this under, it's up to you. So but for this one, now if we place it like this, it's now looking like it's afar off. So for that, you have to increase the blurriness to make it look like it's really afar off. So just this simple thing with just your product. So if you do this, maybe you can just have your text here and whatever you want to have here. It's simple to create. So let's say we bring it down. It's looking like it's on top of this one, so we can still take it down. Okay, so when you are creating designs like this, try to see how it will appear in real life. Now these ones I'm creating, my dimensions are not so accurate. Now look at this edge. So I'm just trying to do this as fast as I can, but you might need to use some guiding lines to ensure that your dimensions are accurate, or you can just draw rectangles and give them some form of perspective. Now let me show you another way you can actually use this. I'm going to group this, and then I'm going to hide it. This time let me change the background color to something like green. Let's use green. Okay, so now pay attention. I'll select the pen tool again. Maybe I'll just draw a shape, and then I'll come here, create something like this. No, that's too much space. So you can just draw something similar to this. So I want to show you how highlights, because I've been hitting on the subject of highlights and shadows. Tomorrow we are going to deal with photo manipulation. Let me just give you a quick insight into what we'll deal with tomorrow. Okay, so let's go to Pinterest. Let's search for product photo manipulation. So we are going to deal with product photo manipulation tomorrow. So you see all this kind of stuff, all these things. Now this is a drink and this is a waterfall. Now you can see all of this stuff. So that's what we are going to deal with tomorrow. Now look at this Coca-Cola one. Someone created this. Now of course, nowadays we have AI tools that can help you with this. All right. So it's important that even if AI can help you do it, you also know how to do it yourself. Because now AI is supposed to help you make your work easier. All right. So we are going to learn how to create manipulations like this tomorrow. So look at this one. This is a Sprite bottle. So we are going to learn this photo manipulation tomorrow. That's why yesterday and today I've been talking about highlights and shadows, because if you want something to look natural, you have to understand highlights and shadows, because it occurs naturally. That's the element that makes your designs look realistic if you're going for realism. Okay, so let's look at this. Now this is this one. So we are going to learn product photo manipulation. So you can go to Pinterest and check product photo manipulation and see what we are going to learn. So this is a lot of stuff. Okay, so let's go back to what I was explaining. So I drew this outline and then I'm going to make it a shape. Now this time I want to select green, but let's go with a dark shade of green. And now this looks like an ordinary shape. This looks like an ordinary shape, but then I would create another layer. You would see the magic that will happen after now. So still with the pen tool, there is a game that helps you master the pen tool. All right, so I'll send in the game after the class so you can practice. It's a web-based game, so use your browser. So it's going to help you master the pen tool. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to draw a shape on top of this one. So it can just be a rectangle, and then we can make it a selection. Can make it a selection, not a shape this time. And then on this layer you can select your bucket fill tool. So if you right click on your gradient tool, you will see paint bucket tool. So once you select that paint bucket tool, ensure your foreground color is white. Okay, or maybe a darker, no, a brighter form of this color, maybe something close to white. So you can select your actual color and in the color picker bring it to something like this. Maybe it may not have to be pure white, but it should be something like this. So once you click inside here, it paints that color. So you can deselect by pressing Ctrl D. So now we'll use this as a clipping mask. So right click and create clipping mask. So now it looks like we are just creating Nigerian flag. No, but you're going to see what we're trying to create, all right, in a short time. So we'll blur this out. Let's go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So if we blur this out, now you can see it's beginning to take form. If we blur this out and then maybe reduce the opacity to like 50%, or let's say 60, you can now see that it's, no, let's go with 50%. I think 50% is much better for this. So you can see now it's now beginning to look like a silk or a shiny material. Okay, now let's do the same thing for this edge, just so that it's a lot more darker. We want it to look like, I don't know if you get the picture of what we are trying to create. So another layer. So since I created it under this one that is clipped, this one automatically comes with a clipping mask. So just like before, the pen tool, or you can also use the polygonal lasso tool. So right click on your, depending on the version of Photoshop you're using. I'm currently using 2025, so the icon you see here is selection brush tool. But if you're using older versions, you'll see the lasso tool. So where the lasso tool is, right click and select the polygonal lasso tool. So we can just draw, and then this time we'll fill it with black or a darker version of this green, anyone you prefer. So still our paint bucket tool, select it. Your foreground color should be maybe a darker version of this green, maybe not pure black. So you just click here, and then you deselect with Ctrl D, and then just like before, we are going to blur this out. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So we are going to blur this out as well. So you can now see that it's beginning to look a lot more realistic. So you can reduce the opacity to 50, just like before. So you can see now that if I turn off this two, this is just an ordinary shape. But if you turn it on, it's now having some form of realism to it. Okay, so just understanding highlights and shadows. So now this bright area is usually referred to as highlights, and this dark area is referred to as shadows. Okay, so let's do one here again, just something tiny along this edge. So you can select this layer and turn on, create another layer with your polygonal lasso tool. You draw, and then I don't think this side does not have to be so large, because now it also has to match the perspective of what you're trying to create. So with our bucket tool selected, still the same color we used for this side, you click here, and then once that is created, do Ctrl D and then blur it again. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. So I think the same blur amount is okay. Then drop the opacity to maybe still 50. Let's just work with 50. So now if I turn these off, you can now see how realistic this is looking. If I turn this off, this is just an ordinary shape. So if I turn this on, you can now see it's looking very realistic. So I'm going to, now I want here now, based on the fact that it seems like the light is coming from this angle, you can just create something under, maybe create another layer under it, and then still with your selection tool, you can make it look like there's a shadow there. So just draw something that you can just blur, and we can still use the same color with the paint bucket tool. Paste it, Ctrl D to deselect. So go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then this doesn't have to be too much like the other ones, it can just be something like this, and then maybe reduce the opacity to like 3 or 30 rather. This can be, or still 50 still works, or let's say 30, 40. Let's go with 40. Now if you're trying to get opacity automatically with your layer selected, any number you hit, if I hit 8, it gives me 80% opacity. If I hit 6, it gives me 60% opacity. But now if you just change blend modes you see that it is highlighted in blue. So if you try to press it, it will not work. Or if you're using the brush tool and you start hitting the numbers, it's going to change the opacity of your brush tool. So you have to be careful what is activated. So if something else is activated, you press enter, and then maybe once you select your layer again and you hit any other button, it's going to do justice to that. So now, by just drawing shapes, you can see that we created something truly amazing. All right, so let's try to put something there. Let's see what it would look like. There was a time we did a necklace design. I think we can use one of that to simulate what we are trying to achieve. Yeah, well, I was thinking we downloaded something similar. Yeah, well, let's try to download one PNG. So we can say necklace PNG. So anything that you're much more comfortable with. Which one do we go for? So I just want us to place an object under here to make it look like, I want you to really understand. Now, like I said before, if I turn this off, you can see this is just ordinary shapes. So now you will see the advanced forms of this tomorrow when we are dealing with the photo manipulation aspect. All right. Why is this taking so much time? Let's look for another one. So I just need something simple, nothing more. Yeah, well, we can go with this, I guess. Well, let's go with this. This already has green, something green, so I think this would work better. This will work better. So we can just download. If you're downloading from PNG Egg, you might need to solve this captcha, whatever, and then it's going to download. Okay, so we have, let me put it somewhere else. So we have this. No. Let me name this. Let me just give it emerald necklace. All right. So I'm just going to open this. I'm going to open my Photoshop. And then I'm going to drag this in. So let's say you're making a design for a jewelry brand and you want to do something that they would love or appreciate. Let's try to adjust the perspective of this. So right click and go to perspective. Let's see. Yeah, well, this is now beginning to look distorted, simply because it's not a 3D object. Okay, so it's a bit complicated, so let's just leave it like this. Now I just wanted to show you what it would look like, but let's assume we wanted it to feel as real as this. Okay, you can just draw, let's draw another shape. Let's say we draw something like this, and then just to simulate this, we can so you select the paint bucket tool, create a new layer, and then you can paste this, but it has to be under. Okay, so now this is looking way darker, so let's make it brighter. So you can just select a brighter shade and then click again. No, it's still dark. Too bright. So maybe something around here should work. So once you click it and you bring it down, Control D to deselect. Now let's bring this under this shadow layer. So if you bring it under this shadow layer, and then let's change the blend mode of this to multiply, and then you can now see that it's now giving us this sense of realism. Okay, do you understand? You can see that we have now. I don't want to spend so much time creating similar effect on this thing, because for this to really blend with this other one we just created, we have to like still create some highlights and shadows. Do you get? So but we are running out of time already, so I might just delete this, but I just wanted you to see this, see what it looks like now. It's now giving off that real shadow effect. Okay, so that's just it on shadows and highlights. So tomorrow we'll use the advanced version of this. Let's just add a light effect like before. Create a new layer, select your brush tool, foreground color. Let's use the same color we used here, or even brighter, and then you can just maybe reduce your brush size, and then maybe click on this and change the blend mode to screen. Yeah, well, if you need to do more of it, that's now too much. Maybe if you need to do one or two of those somewhere, just make it look like it's shiny. You get? So this is before, this is after. So you can even select a brighter color or pure white, and then still come to the center of this one and still click it to make it look like it's so bright. So this is what we created, and the only thing we downloaded was this necklace. Okay, so when I was starting out in graphic design and I needed something like this, I'll start stressing myself, searching and searching Google, trying to find a PNG for this and all of that, which was time consuming. If you want to take this far, you might still have to do some highlight and shadow things on your background, but that's a lot of work. But we'll stop here for today. Tomorrow we move into the advanced form of shadows and highlights, but we are going to do it in photo manipulation. So all this stuff you're seeing here, we are going to do it. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to try my best to make sure we start as early as 7 o'clock, so that we would be able to achieve a lot before 9 p.m. I want us to have a 2-hour class tomorrow. So from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So that's what we are going to do. Okay, thank you so much for joining today's class. See you tomorrow.